Good afternoon, everyone. Following the November 6th throne speech, I would like to just highlight a few of the upcoming initiatives which fall under my remit as the Minister of Home Affairs. The first is consumer protection related and has to do with loans and mortgages. I will soon be introducing legislation that ensures new homeowners and existing mortgage holders have enhanced protection for loans and mortgages. In addition, the current landlord and tenant legislation will be modernized to provide further clarity regarding the rights of landlords and tenants, while also addressing the lack of protection for boarders and persons who rent rooms in homes and who share common spaces. This is a timely initiative, as I am fully aware that we are at the early stages of the economic impacts that the pandemic has brought upon our country. And we've already received a number of complaints around actions being taken by landlords and tenants under these very sensitive conditions. Another area highlighted in the throne speech is the subsea cable industry. I can confirm today that the subsea cable fees regime will be completed in the not too distant future, allowing Bermuda to not only position itself as the premier North Atlantic communications hub for subsea telecommunications and cables coming across the Atlantic Ocean, but we will be able to reap benefits of an industry that is providing almost all of the global connectivity and data protection in our increasingly global online world. Under my ministry, particularly in the Department of Energy, we will be spearheading training opportunities for Bermudians to become level 1 solar installers, giving priority to those who have lost their jobs and are perhaps looking for new opportunities with a new career, as well as the introduction of a green energy and environmental justice fund, which will encourage local and overseas investors to provide funding for the installation of solar in residential homes and small businesses. Additional training to develop solar installers and energy managers, so growing the labor force in that area and creating new opportunities for persons in our renewable energy industry as it begins to grow. Initial investment for entrepreneurs who are looking to enter into the renewable market as installers or perhaps set up their own energy management business. Legislation to introduce a regulatory sandbox will also be finalized. And this will be a unique opportunity to allow innovative new technologies in the renewable space to be tested in Bermuda. So creating Bermuda as a test bed for the new emerging renewable energy technologies that are out there in the marketplace. The theme of this throne speech is rebuilding Bermuda with Bermudians at heart. And I have no doubt that these initiatives, once implemented, will help to fulfill the goal of this government with rebuilding Bermuda out of the pandemic with Bermudians at heart and growing our economy and creating jobs and bringing new investment into our economy. Thank you, everyone. I'll now turn over the mic to Minister Jason Hayward, who will speak to the initiatives that he and his ministry will be facilitating coming out of the throne speech. Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Good day to members of the media and the listening public. Today's press conference, I will speak on 4 topics: the introduction of a living wage, the execution of financial assistance reform, the implementation of unemployment insurance, and the introduction of an economic investment certificate. The Living Wage Act 2019 came into effect in October of last year. The Act provides, among other things, for the establishment of a wage commission. The Commission is required to conduct studies, reviews, and analysis as necessary to determine the requirements for a basic standard of living in Bermuda, and to make recommendations on the minimum hourly wage and on the living wage rate to be prescribed by the Minister. The current Wage Commission is chaired by Mr. Cordell O'Reilly. Upon receipt of the report from the Wage Commission, expected in the coming months, the government will review recommendations and considerations with an aim to table in Parliament a wage bill that will establish a statutory minimum wage and a national living wage. The establishment of minimum and living wage rates will help support families that are struggling because of low wage rates that do not allow them to cover their basic needs such as housing and food. Bermuda's high cost of living and decades of stagnant wages gives an even greater need for the establishment of decent wage rates. The Financial Assistance Reform Strategy aims to charge a new course for financial assistance, making it a more effective and efficient system that places emphasis on transitioning those who have been unable to participate fully in the productive economy and realize their potential. There is a more vigorous motivation to move able-bodied and disabled recipients into employment opportunities as soon as practicable to avoid long-term dependency on the system. The reform strategy will focus on the following aims: increase the sustainability of the financial assistance system, strengthen education, training, and employment services, encourage individuals and families to be financially independent, and reform the approach to better support people who are disabled. To this end, Parliament will consider financial assistance reform initiatives that will better place recipients on a pathway to employment and, like most working people, allow them to save and build their assets. The financial assistance reform will be comprehensive and result in a whole new experience for current and future financial assistance recipients. Over the years, subsequent administrations have hesitated to introduce unemployment insurance. However, we can no longer take that stance. We must now take a progressive approach to introduce this crucial social safety net. The precarious position of businesses and the potential for additional economic contraction have demonstrated a clear need to provide unemployment insurance. Unemployment insurance is a social policy instrument aimed at supporting individuals when they are displaced from the workforce. The government offered an unemployment benefit to those affected by COVID-19 for a maximum of 18 weeks, spending upwards of $57 million, and is currently offering a supplemental unemployment benefit to support families in need. However, the current program is unsustainable, as it is solely funded by the government, which is experiencing fiscal stress. Moving forward, the government, along with a wide range of stakeholders, will consider the main issues in implementing an unemployment insurance plan for Bermuda, including issues such as eligibility, contributions, benefit amounts, duration of benefits, funding, administration, staffing, and legal matters, to name a few. The government will ensure a strategy to transition into an unemployment insurance scheme is developed so that this most crucial social protection is provided to displaced workers, supporting them and their families, allowing them to receive a basic income during their time of need. The economic investment policy is designed to stimulate economic activity, create the environment for job creation, and help market Bermuda as a place to reside and do business. The objective of the policy is to fully harness immigration as one of many tools for creating economic growth for Bermuda while taking into account our limited space and ensuring that Bermudians fully benefit. Affluent individuals around the world seek to live in places that meet certain criteria. They often seek safety, stability, sophistication, connected places with a comfortable climate, and a rule of law. Of utmost importance is they seek a place where they will feel comfortable with their children. These individuals and their families have the means to make significant financial investments, develop business, and create job opportunities, which can benefit Bermudians. Bermuda must take advantage of these opportunities. Therefore, the government will continue to protect the rights of Bermudians while reforming policies to increase the residential population to support economic growth. The government will further revise the residential certificate policy to require those granted the right to live in Bermuda to make economic investment in the island or to invest in the new Bermuda Trust Fund. The fund will be set up to benefit those who have not had the benefit of historic inherited wealth. It must be noted that the current residential certificate policy only requires an individual to prove that they have substantial means, without any significant investment in Bermuda. The current policy does not serve the best interests of the Bermudian people and will be revised in the coming months. The people of Bermuda have entrusted this government to lead, and the progressive and bold initiatives featured in the speech from the throne will form part of the Ministry of Labor's priorities over the next year. We cannot continue to do things the same. We must all work together and draw on both the lessons learned from our past and from our current crisis to ensure the future well-being of all our people. Thank you. I'll now take questions from members of the media.
Thank you. Mr. Hayward, I think first of all, I was trying to find out how many people were unemployed. An update on that?
Certainly in my last statement, I believe that the unemployment rate is doubled from the 2019 levels, so we can safely assume that there is an estimation between 6,000 and 7,000 people who are unemployed.
Okay, so it hasn't changed from the last time you reported that, which was some time ago. And how many people are on financial assistance? Has that changed since the last time you gave a figure, which was some time ago?
Yes, the number of financial assistance recipients continuously increase week after week. What I'll do is endeavor to provide you with the exact amounts.
Okay. You were talking about the unemployment benefits to $57 million. I think that was the total pot, was it? Was that the total pot of money?
So there was original funds set out for the unemployment benefit, and then when the supplemental unemployment benefit came in, there was a second tranche of funds that were approved. So no, the $57 million was not the total amount of money for future benefits.
So that money is totally exhausted, is that what you're saying?
The $57 million, the upwards of $57 million that I referenced in my statement has been spent, correct?
Has been spent. And is that it? Is that why you're looking for another way? There's no more in the kitty?
Incorrect. As I said, when we implemented the supplemental unemployment benefit, and we knew that persons were transitioning off, the Minister of Finance made provision for additional funding to fund those programs.
The minimum living wage and statutory living wage, all of that stuff, when do you expect to have some answers on that?
In the report, I said in the coming months, I expect a report from the Wage Commission. Once the Wage Commission provides me with their report, then it's the minister's responsibility to opine on it, and then I will enact the wage bill, which has the statutory minimum wage amounts and the living wage rates.
So do you expect that before the next budget?
We expect it in this parliamentary year, and so certainly it's a during speech initiative, and so it should be completed prior to November 2021.
And the residential certificate policy review, do we expect to, in the next fiscal year, have some proposals, some decisions maybe that will affect people?
Definitely. Within the next 3 to 6 months, you should hear further communication regarding initiatives surrounding our residential certificate policy.
And I'm sure you're expecting that to be somewhat controversial. Are you expecting some sort of town halls to discuss that, or is this just going to be an establishment of a policy, or is there going to be some discussion about it?
Certainly, we will endeavor to have conversation regarding it. Consultation has already begun regarding the particular policy. I don't see where it will be controversial if persons were aware of the current residential certificate policy and determined that they would be quickly able to determine that that policy does not serve the best interests of the Bermudian people, and would see that the policy that we're proposing is a much better policy in comparison to what we currently have.
Because part of this you were saying was involving telling people that if you want to stay here, you've got to spend X number of dollars. I mean, any idea what sort of money we're talking about? You've got to invest money or put money into some sort of special fund.
The exact amount will certainly be a prescribed feature of the policy. What I could say is the policy right now states that if one wants to obtain a residential certificate, that they must demonstrate that they have substantial means. So a person could have 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 8 million, 10 million, but that money is held in a bank overseas and never enters the Bermudian economy. And that person is allowed to reside in Bermuda indefinitely. So what we're saying is the economic investment or some of these funds that person has should be placed in the Bermudian economy for that person to reside in Bermuda on an ongoing basis.
So not a gift, it's more or less investing into a business maybe.
Correct. And so there will be different investment vehicles. The Bermuda Fund is one. You can invest in a business. You can maybe want to invest in property. As long as there is significant impact on the Bermuda economy, under one of the areas which will be featured in the policy, the application will be accepted.
Is there any understanding of what financial assistance is going to cost us this year, and as opposed to last year?
Certainly, I expect the amount to go up. I don't have the exact estimate, but when we get into the budgetary process, which will begin this month, certainly those numbers will be ironed out, and I'll be happy to share the projected cost of the financial assistance program with the public.
Any idea what it was last year?
I can endeavor to get the exact amounts for you.
Okay.
Provide those to you.
Okay. Thank you, Minister.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for having us, ministers. I was hoping, if I could, to hear, we got the good news last night about the government stepping in and helping with the Fairmont redundancies, which is obviously good news. Maybe can you tell us a bit about how that idea was hatched and worked out?
From our perspective, I don't want to frame it as how the idea was hatched. There was a need from a large group of employees who were reliant on those redundancy payments. It was unfortunate that the employer couldn't meet its obligation in October, and so the government felt obligated to step up and support that large volume of employees who were actually anticipating the redundancy payments. What you may want to appreciate is that some of those employees have worked in that establishment for decades, and as a result, this is the end of that employment relationship. Some of those persons are what I'll consider to be mature workers, and they will find it very difficult to transition into other occupational categories within our economy. As a result, the redundancy payments are critical in terms of providing those persons with some level of support during this rough economic time.
Thank you, sir. And obviously, we understand it's it's a huge number of people. I mean, it's been Mr. Ferbert over at the BIU has referred to it as the biggest redundancy that we've had. Still, we did want to ask if there was any concern over other large employers who might be in trouble, seeing this as an opportunity to say, I'm thinking back maybe to white supermarkets some years ago, they just didn't have any money, but people to say, well, we can't afford to meet the severance, maybe the government can help us out.
I think every situation has to be handled on its own merit. Certainly, this is not a precedent-setting situation. There were unique circumstances regarding Southampton Princess, but it will be for the Ministry of Labor and Ministry of Finance to evaluate the circumstances surrounding the redundancy and have dialogue on how we can best proceed moving forward.
Thanks. And lastly, I know this came up at a totally different time. It was when the party was in opposition and a lot has changed. Immigration being as sensitive as it is, we look at the long-term residency. I remember back in Parliament, Mr. Roban, it might have been yourself that said it, but that the party viewed paying for citizenship as a red line not to be crossed. I don't think you're talking about that, but for those who still have that worry, as Bermudians are sensitive about the immigration issue, in terms of that investment, it's not, as it were, paying for residency.
That was not a term that I used.
Yes.
This is not paying for citizenship or status. And so a person neither gets citizenship nor status by this economic investment certificate.
Perfect. Thanks, sir.
Just one quick question. Speaking about status, I mean, is that still on the table? Do people still getting status?
Certainly, people
Right.
get status according to the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act.
Okay.
And so there are a number of provisions in the Immigration and Protection Act that allow people to obtain status in Bermuda.
Any idea how many people got status last year?
I don't have those figures, but I could tell you if you were a spouse of a Bermudian and you resided here for 10 years, after 10 years you can apply for status. If you were, right now we just passed a mixed status families bill, which means that if you're born after September 1 to a Bermudian parent, you automatically get status. And
So I just don't see a list anymore. You used to see a list. There used to be a number. You just don't see it anymore. So I was just wondering how many people.
I can endeavor to provide you with
Yeah.
statistics on
Okay,
that.
sorry, I don't want to take.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Ministers.
afternoon.
Maya Palacio here for Media Maya. First, I'd like to thank Minister Jason Hayward for getting back to me with the questions that I asked last month about equal pay. Now, as you mentioned about the throne speech, you said one of your tasks was about living wage. Would the equal pay for gender commitment be falling underneath that for your ministry?
Certainly what we are looking at is equal pay, and we are also looking at pay equity, which is two separate things which people use interchangeably. But equal pay is basically two persons working in the same position but making different amounts of money. When we start talking about pay equity, we start talking about male-dominated positions versus historically female-dominated positions and the inequity between those particular positions. It is easier for us to enact legislation and in support of equal pay is a little bit more of a complex exercise with pay equity. Equal pay is actually protected in the Human Rights Act. The problem is you have to prove that you've been discriminated you're being discriminated against based off of one of those qualifying factors, whether it's race, sex. When you put it in another act, you just have to demonstrate that there is inequity happening between the two parties, and it's for the company to provide a reasonable justification as to why. And so it's something we're actively looking at. It's something, a direction that the world is actually moving in, and I'm happy to lead the charge in supporting equal pay, especially between male and females.
Now, when you say we, exactly who is a part of this we in this team? Like, who's specifically targeting?
The Ministry of Labor.
Is there any, like, core group, or it's just everyone's hands-on?
So, responsible for labor policy is the Labor Relations section.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. And also, I'm sure everyone here has noticed, Bermuda Stats has been putting out a lot of the numbers about, equal pay and the discrepancies amongst that. And I kind of just want to get some clarity, if any one of you are able to provide actually, is that why do other non-white Bermudians make significantly more in the 2019 median gross annual income than any other Bermudians? Like, why are persons who are not Bermudians making a lot more than Bermudians? You could shed some light.
It would have to do with the occupational categories that they are actually in. And so if you take the median of those occupational categories, they come up to a lot higher than the median. And when you average the salary of other occupational categories that, well, for example, Bermudians or black Bermudians actually possess. And that's why if you look at the low-end jobs, that's factored into that medium, and so the low-end jobs actually will bring down the medium of other demographic groups other than those white males who typically possess higher paying jobs in our economy.
So when it comes to those higher paying jobs and getting Bermudians qualified to be able to take these positions, because I know that has been an initiative of the government to provide, the experience and the learnership so that we could take over in these type of high-end positions. Can we expect like a difference in this median gross income then for 2020 or 2021 when these stats come out, do you think, from the initiatives that the government has tried to produce?
We will continue to strive to close that particular gap.
Okay. And going back over a week ago about the closed category jobs, I kind of just want to know, what were the guidelines in picking the specific jobs that you picked for that?
And so there were a number of factors. Some had to do with whether or not these were entry-level jobs that we can we can train Bermudians. Whether those persons who are unemployed, we assess some of their skill sets to determine whether or not they'll be suitable for those jobs. We also had employment saturation in a number of categories, where persons were in those categories but were working short and reduced hours with non-Bermudian counterparts. And so there was a number of factors that went into our deliberations, and the final list of occupations met some form of criteria, and we're confident that that will free up capacity for Bermudians to re-enter the workforce. That is working in conjunction with our job strategy, where we will be actively training and developing Bermudians over the next 3 to 6 months.
Some of the jobs, actually looking at it, seem kind of, I'm sure, a lot of people on the island would be like, really, that was a job that was open to, let's say, persons who weren't Bermudian? Like, for instance, one I think was like a tennis coach or something, just off the top of my head remembering. Why wasn't this? Because I know that Bermudians have complained and have made it known that they've found it hard to find a job on their own island. So why isn't that this initiative that is now put in place wasn't, like the closed category jobs, wasn't done even like years ago? Why now?
And so not all of those were open. Some were closed and some were restricted. And if there's a difference between closed and restricted, we moved a lot of the restricted categories now to closed categories. Why we haven't moved at a quicker rate, I believe that when jobs were plentiful in the country, there was less labor responsiveness. I think now where we see the contraction in the job market, we are, it's almost our responsibility to be more responsive to the conditions that our current island is placed with.
Okay, and I think my last question about those closed job categories was, where can people actually find the list of where it's like the open jobs, just to know what other positions persons who aren't Bermudian can actually apply for?
I don't understand that question.
So, so the closed job category list that you've filed out, which I think was 42, where can people look to find like, okay, so where can persons who are non-Bermudian can apply for these types of certain jobs, like jobs that weren't listed on this closed job category? Is it that something that people just have to research on their own, or do they already know?
Yes, so it's kind of default. Anything that's not closed is open.
Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate that.
Just one other thing, about the financial assistance numbers that you promised to provide for me. The one other question I wondered about that was, what number of those people were single mothers? So I wondered, you promised that you would find out how many people were on financial assistance. So but I wondered what portion of them might have been single mothers.
That's actually a good question, and let me explain to you why. When you have a recipient on financial assistance, that means that entire person's household has been assessed. That means that the household has been assessed and it's been demonstrated that the household, not just the individual, don't have enough income for the level of expenditure of the household. And so when you see one recipient on financial assistance, most time it represents more than one person who are receiving a benefit from the government. And so the single mother one is important, but even if that person wasn't a single mother and that person was in a married or a relationship and had a partner, it would still demonstrate that the household doesn't have sufficient income for the expenditure levels. And then we start looking at households with children, it gives greater concern. So I take no joy in informing you that the number of persons on financial assistance is actually growing up, because what I'm actually saying is more people are heading into a poverty position, and that is something that I certainly don't take lightly. And this is why we've had this, we're now moving aggressive in terms of labor market intervention, because we need to get people back to work.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any further questions from the media? All right, thank you all for attending and have a great day.